This is a story about Yan Minya, an 18-year-old guy who was a troublemaker and a truant. His girlfriend, Yan Min, worried about him and urged him to use common sense. There were only 3 months left until the final exam, which he needed to pass in order to get into university. It required diligent studying, but Yan Minya wasn't too concerned about it. Apparently, he was deeply disappointed with life. His girlfriend, Minyan, knew him well from before and knew that despite his behavior, he was a good guy deep down. However, he was now skipping school right from the classes, despite all the persuasions from his girlfriend. Skillfully jumping over the school fence, he left the school premises, evading the efforts of the school security guard. Satisfied with his escape, he walked down the street and made plans. Once he had been a diligent student, perhaps he would have continued to study well, but one unpleasant incident happened to him in junior high school. He was in love with a girl named Suya. They were close friends, sat together at one desk, and studied together. She was his first love. On that day, Yan Minya and Suya were called to the teacher's office, where their fathers and the teacher were already waiting for them. The teacher informed their parents about their close relationship. Yan Minya's father was strict and ruthless. Despite all the teacher's persuasions not to hit the boy, the father grabbed his son by the tie and struck him hard in the face. The boy didn't understand why he was being punished. His father said that the teacher had told him everything, and Suya's parent discouraged her from communicating with him because he came from a poor family while they were wealthy. The teacher was to blame in this situation because he was the one who told the parents about the children's interaction. He knew that Suya's family was rich, and Suya couldn't be friends with someone like Yan Min. It was all because Suya's father bribed the teacher. After that incident, Suya changed schools, and the teacher, losing his advantage, vented all his anger on the poor student. As a result, the boy completely lost his desire to study. But that wasn't the most unpleasant thing that happened. Yan Minya was walking down the street and saw 2 thugs forcing an old man who was selling old things on the corner to pay them for protection. The old man was confused and didn't know how to act in such a situation. He was just trying to earn enough for his living by selling odds and ends, and the thugs had never bothered him before. They overturned all his goods and tried to humiliate the poor old man, knowing he had no money. They forced him to beg for forgiveness and bow to them so they would let him go this time. Yan Minya couldn't pass by and approached the 2 thugs. They recognized him since our truant was also a troublemaker and often hung out with the thugs. He had some authority among them. However, these 2 insolent guys decided to establish their own order in this neighborhood. Yan Minya calmly grabbed one of the audacious thugs by the throat and threatened to kick his ass. The thugs screamed and begged to be released, but at that moment, his buddy grabbed a brick and hit Yan Minya, causing the brick to break. However, it only enraged our hero, and he delivered a powerful kick to the attacker's face, followed by a punch. Then Yan Minya, in a friendly manner, offered the old man to trade at the local grocery market since this neighborhood wasn't safe. The old man was amazed by the strength and resilience of the young boy and asked if he was a disciple of the Xiaoli Temple, as he saw the skills of the golden armor technique in him. After all, an ordinary person couldn't withstand a brick hit like that. In Yan Minya's pocket, there were glasses that broke during the fight. His father had worked hard to buy them, and the boy was very upset. However, the street vendor calmed him down and offered him something in return. Yan Min didn't expect any reward from the old man. He didn't think there was anything valuable he could take from him. But the old man said he had a pair of ready-made glasses with the most advanced technology in the world. He wanted to give them to a good person, and he saw such a person in his savior. He handed Yan Min a small box. Yan Min hesitated but eventually accepted the gift. To his surprise, they weren't regular glasses. They were contact lenses. As he examined the box, the old man mysteriously disappeared. Yan Min realized that the old man was no ordinary person. After wandering around for a while, he decided to return to school for the afternoon session. Skipping too many classes made it difficult for him to understand what the teacher was explaining. He felt disappointed and disheartened, realizing that he couldn't make up for the missed time. Then he received a note from his friend, Min Yan, expressing her happiness to see him back in school and encouraging him not to lose hope and to study hard. It uplifted his spirits, and he decided to take a proactive approach to his studies. With only 100 days left until the final exam, he knew he had to study each textbook in just 5 days. The bell rang, and the math teacher, an incredible beauty, entered the classroom, announcing a surprise quiz. The students grumbled in dissatisfaction. Yeonmin knew he couldn't write the quiz himself, so he thought about using the lenses given to him by the old man. He took out the box and decided to give them a try. Yeonmin put on the lenses, but to his great disappointment, he couldn't see anything clearly. It was so blurry that he couldn't even read the note his classmate had written. He felt frustrated with his bad luck and exclaimed, "What the hell? Let me see clearly." To his immense surprise, the numbers on the note seemed to transfer onto the lenses, just like an autofocus camera capturing sharp images. He could even see the tiniest words clearly. Trying to adjust the lenses slightly, the image disappeared and he couldn't see properly again. But with focus and concentration, the clear image returned. He realized the treasure he had acquired. His thoughts were interrupted by the stunning math teacher who stood beside his desk with her elegant figure and a magnificent bust. Yeonmin found himself lost in daydreams, but the teacher snapped at him to start working faster. During the break, he decided to test the lens's capabilities and see how far they could help him see. He noticed a small hole in the fence, something his classmates wouldn't have noticed from that distance. His mood significantly improved. Yeonmin started making plans on how the lenses could help him pass the final exam. He could see perfectly, but he didn't know where he could find answers during the exam. That's when he remembered Min Yan and how she appeared in his dreams, wearing a swimsuit and bikini. She was incredibly attractive, and he felt aroused by the thought of seeing her naked. Interrupting his fantasies, the teacher called him to the front of the class. Min Yan, his girlfriend, was standing near his desk. When Yeonmin turned towards her, he saw her completely naked, unable to believe his eyes. His dreams had become a reality. "Why aren't you wearing anything?" he asked in astonishment. "What do you mean, not wearing anything?" "Are you sick?" replied Min Yan. But indeed, he saw her in black and pink lingerie. "You shameless!" Min Yan exclaimed, slapping him. "Is this all because of the contact lenses? Really?" She couldn't have come to class like this, only in underwear. The guy closed his eyes and decided to take another look. Indeed, now she stood there in her school clothes, and Yeonmin apologized for this idiotic situation, saying that he must not have fully woken up yet. The girl would have believed it, but how did he know the color of her underwear? On his way to the teacher's room, Yeonmin pondered how these lenses allowed him to see through clothing. How does that even work? He remembered that before seeing his girlfriend naked, he had been intensely thinking about it. Surely he could control the lenses with the power of his mind. There were many beautiful schoolgirls in the hallway. Yeonmin felt a little ashamed of such thoughts and even considered himself a bit of a pervert. He believed that a real man could only see a naked girl with her consent. But for some reason, he decided that it didn't apply to guys and shifted his gaze to a muscular guy with dumbbells who had an athletic build. Maybe there's something else we don't know about our main hero. You know what I mean. Straining, he activated the lenses and saw a shirt under the jacket. Then he shifted his gaze below the waist. To his surprise, the guy was wearing pink women's underwear with polka dot bows. At school, Yeonmin had a certain authority, and even such pumped-up guys were afraid of him. Yeonmin told the buff guy that he shouldn't wear such flashy underwear, which left him perplexed and embarrassed. After all, how could he know about it? Continuing his way to the teacher's room, our hero with supervision tried to guess why the teacher had called him and even fantasized that maybe she wanted him. Yes, she was older, but very attractive, and he wouldn't mind going on a date with her. Putting aside his fantasies, he entered the office, forgetting to knock on the door. He caught the teacher playing cards, and she clearly got nervous. The guy asked, "Are you hiding something, Miss Chow?" After all, you wouldn't be scared if you had nothing to hide. Trying not to look at the teacher, he asked why she had summoned him. The teacher asked, "Don't you have anything to tell me?" He thought she was referring to help with the lenses, but she showed him a test paper. Naturally, the teacher noticed that his and his classmates' answers matched completely, and she demanded an explanation. The guy was so clueless that he didn't even bother changing the answers slightly or correcting the mistakes. The teacher's appearance prevented him from concentrating, even though she scolded and shouted at him. He desired her so much and already imagined that he would have to change his sheets again due to excitement. The teacher scolded him, but said that from that day on, he would have to come to her after classes, and they would study together. Math teacher was, of course, incredibly beautiful, but Yeonmin had no desire to study with her. And now, another classmate, who decided to stand up for Myeonyeon, had found him and wanted to have a man-to-man talk. The girl got worried that a fight might break out because of her and decided to be present for the conversation as well. This idiot decided to start the conversation with shouting and threats, threatening physical violence if Yeonmin ever offended the girl again. But Yeonmin wasn't a coward and quickly stopped the bully, saying that if he approached him with such talk again, he would beat him up so badly it would be unforgettable. Gritting his teeth, the sorry defender left. Yeonmin was angry after the conversation and got a little carried away with Myeonyeon, asking her to leave him alone. But she just wanted to help. Yeonmin was the only one who constantly skipped classes, and she wanted to guide him onto the right path. So she offered her assistance. Calming down, the guy thought it was a chance, and under the guise of studying, he could spend time alone with her. Therefore, he agreed to her proposal. After self-study, the students went home. The defender who stood up for Myeonyeon came from a very wealthy family. He arrived in an expensive Mercedes with a personal driver. The young rich guy, of course, wanted to teach Yeonmin a lesson for confronting him. But if he sent his security after him now, all the evidence would lead to him. He didn't want such problems and decided to hold off on any confrontations for now. Meanwhile, Yeonmin raced home on his bike. The next day, Yeonmin was sitting with his textbooks, which surprised his friend and classmate. It wasn't like Yeonmin to be studying. The young troublemaker himself didn't fully understand his motivations for taking up studying. Maybe it was because of Teacher Chow, or maybe because of Myeonyeon. Or perhaps it was to stop his father from getting anxious. There was one more interesting feature. He could see the entire contents of a book without opening it. This would definitely come in handy during exams. In a good mood, he wrote a note to Myeonyeon, saying that he would study hard for her. Sensing some flirtation in the note, Myeonyeon realized she had been overly attentive to him. In her opinion, a relationship between them was impossible. She just wanted to guide him onto the right path. But if she were to tell him that now, he would surely abandon his studies again. It was time to learn from another beauty. After classes, he went to see his teacher. Approaching the door, he overheard someone inviting Teacher Chow on a date to a restaurant. However, she declined, saying that she couldn't go because of her lessons with her student. But the persistent admirer insisted. The schoolboy knocked on the door and entered. Inside the room, there was the teacher and a man with a bouquet of roses. The angry admirer lunged at the student and tried to drive him away, but Yeonmin ignored him and pretended not to notice, further infuriating the admirer. But this admirer wasn't just any admirer. He was Teacher Zin. The beautiful teacher didn't entertain his advances and asked him to leave, tossing the bouquet aside. He stormed out of the classroom, slamming the door. Teacher Zin taught physical education and might try to seek revenge on Yeonmin for interfering with his plans. As I mentioned before, Yeonmin knew how to stand up for himself and wasn't afraid of anyone. Although he remembered that Teacher Zin's surname was likely connected to the vice principal, which could create some problems. They finished their classes and began to gather. It was challenging for Yeonmin to concentrate when he saw the beautiful curves and slender legs of his teacher. It was already evening, and they walked together through the schoolyard. The teacher worried that if they were seen together in the evenings, strange rumors might start circulating. Under the pretext of being cold, she quickened her pace and wanted to distance herself from him, but the young man was persistent and offered her his jacket. To be honest, she found it quite pleasant. After all, she had come to this city alone to work and had almost forgotten what it was like to receive male attention. As they walked and chatted amiably, two troublemakers approached them. It seemed like a robbery. Yes, indeed, the thugs wanted to rob the couple and pulled out knives from their pockets. Frightened, the teacher pressed herself against Yan Min. Thanks to his lenses, Yan Min saw that behind the dumpster, the PE teacher, Teacher Zin, was sitting. It seemed like he had orchestrated this situation to appear as a hero in front of the teacher. He must have convinced these thugs and planned to pretend to save the beauty. The thugs were clearly dim-witted because they took a long time to figure out what they wanted when asked. But then, they yelled that they wanted to take their money, wallets, phones, and anything valuable. The terrified teacher was ready to hand everything over, but Yan Min had other plans. As soon as the thugs started searching them, Yan Min skillfully began to beat them up. Like a real fighter, he swiftly used his hands and feet, not giving the thugs a single chance. It seemed like the PE teacher's plan had completely backfired. After thoroughly dealing with the sorry thugs, Yan Min student with his teacher. They continued their journey. Yan Min decided to escort her all the way to her home. Upon arriving at the house, the young hero asked to use the restroom at his teacher's place. He rushed into the room and headed straight to the toilet. However, he noticed that the bathroom was also lit, which seemed strange to him. Then an awkward situation unfolded. A beautiful girl came out of the bathroom, and they stared at each other with great surprise. She was only wearing a towel, while Yan Min had his member in his hand. "Who are you?" shouted the beauty. She quickly hid behind the door and called Yan Min a pervert. Teacher Chow realized the awkward situation and burst into the bathroom. However, Yan Min hadn't finished yet, and the teacher caught sight of his genitals. She was momentarily stunned by what she saw, but then slammed the door and also called him a pervert. Yan Min regretted that both girls had seen his member, but he hadn't seen anything himself. Then he remembered his super lenses. He understood that it was not right to spy on others, but decided that it would be fair. He turned around and focused to see through the doors. What he saw was quite intriguing. The beauty from the shower emerged naked and rushed to embrace the red-haired teacher. The sight aroused Yan Min, and it was pleasant to see the beauty rubbing her body against his equally beautiful teacher. "Young Lord Wan, everything is ready," Yan Min heard through the phone receiver, his wealthy classmate. The servant of this guy incited hooligans to deal with Yan Min, and they willingly agreed to the proposal. Just as Yan Min happened to pass by, the servant of the young rich man recognized him, but asked for his name just to be sure. He delivered a message to Yan Min, telling him to stop because he had become too conceited. But Yan Min couldn't be intimidated by such threats. Then the servant gave the command to the hooligans who jumped out from behind a tree, full of fighting spirit. But these were the same hooligans who had tried to take money from the old man and had been beaten by Yan Min when they recognized him. They began to bow to him and ask for forgiveness. Then the two losers decided to run away abruptly, which was not what the young rich man's messenger had agreed upon. Yan Min decided to find out who had organized all this. It was not difficult to guess that it was Wan Ji Tao, that classmate who had stood up for Men Yan. The wealthy bastard was waiting for a call from his servant and was eager to find out how things went. He never expected to see Yan Min right behind him, which startled him so much that he dropped his phone. It was clear that the plan had failed. It seemed that the rich kid had underestimated Yan Min, and he needed to come up with a more cunning plan. In the evening, Yan Min had dinner with his family, and they praised him for his improved grades. They wanted to thank his teacher and give her a gift, but Yan Min suggested expressing gratitude himself by taking her out to a restaurant. The next day, Yan Min was sitting at school trying to solve a problem when he was interrupted by Wan Ji Tao. He said he wanted to apologize, which surprised Yeon-min. The rich kid kept talking about how he regretted the situation and took the blame, explaining that he was jealous of Yeon-min. The young wealthy man wanted to make amends by inviting Yeon-min to dinner at Heaven and Earth, a place where rich people go. Yeon-min had never been to such a place and decided that if they would pay for him, why not go? It was strange that he didn't sense anything suspicious about the invitation. Yeon-min approached Men-yeon to ask for help with the problem and told her about the dinner invitation. But Men-yeon couldn't believe it was possible, given their strained relationship after their last conversation. The teacher noticed that Yeon-min was clearly excelling in school and praised him. She offered to treat him to delicious food. The guy felt awkward that he was being taught for free, and now they were even planning to treat him. To this, the teacher said, "Oh, you feel awkward? Well then, pay for my lessons by treating me at a restaurant." He eagerly agreed. The guy decided to save some money and took her to a local diner. Surely the teacher had expected something else. There was clearly a mutual attraction between Yeon-min and the teacher. After having dinner at a cafe, they walked down the street. Suddenly, a bandit with a knife appeared from around the corner, but this one was clearly stronger than the previous ones. This time, the guy decided not to start a fight and threw the money he had left after dinner on the ground. The bandit said the guy could go, so Yeon-min and his teacher continued walking home. The bandit stated that he would only let the guy go but would keep the girl. "What do you want?" Yeon-min asked the bandit, but everyone understood what he wanted, and he said he would release her once he was done. Yeon-min ordered the girl to run away and turned around to attack. Dodging the knife strike, he swiftly punched the bandit in the face, and before the robber could recover, delivered a kick to his chest, a flying kick in Yeon's style that no one can withstand. The guy searched the bandit and found a bundle of stolen money in his pocket, which he decided to take. The teacher, trembling with fear, hid in a garbage bin. As soon as the girl realized that everything was over, she rushed into Yeon-min's arms. The bandit managed to scratch Yeon-min's face with the knife, but it was just a minor cut. It seemed that the girl had fallen in love with Yeon-min since she declared that she would become his wife in the future. Perhaps it was too early to talk about that. The girl wanted to take Yeon-min to the hospital, but he thought it wasn't necessary and suggested going to her place instead. The guy hailed a taxi and they set off on their way. In such an extreme situation, Yeon-min behaved like a real man. Within a short period, it was already the second attack. The teacher was, of course, impressed by the young man and his actions, but she blamed herself for entertaining inappropriate thoughts about him, considering she was much older. Arriving at their destination, they said goodbye to the taxi driver and went to the teacher's home. The neighbor of the teacher opened the door, wearing stunning lace lingerie that barely contained her magnificent breasts. Through the lace, her voluptuous figure was clearly visible. Yeon-min did not expect such a sight. Another awkward situation involving Yeon-min and the neighbor unfolded. The beauty did not expect to see Yeon-min and quickly covered her breasts, feeling embarrassed. "Pervert!" Yeon-min heard the girl say in his direction once again. The teacher sent the young man to wash up to treat his wound when they arrived at her place. Naturally, the guy hoped to stay, but after cleaning the wound, the girl escorted him out the door. Disappointed and sad, he walked home through the night streets. Passing by a nightclub where many people were having fun, he was stopped by a young and lovely girl. She offered to spend the night with him. She didn't look like a prostitute. She seemed sweet and innocent. However, then she named the price, 3,000 yuan. The girl burned with shame and confessed that it was her first time. Yeon-min was surprised because, according to her words, she was still a virgin. "So why are you doing this?" Yeon-min asked the tearful girl. She burst into tears and explained that she desperately needed the money. Yeon-min tried to calm her down and said he would buy her if she explained the situation. She told him that her father had been hit by a car and the driver fled. They didn't have enough money to hospitalize her father, and if they didn't pay 3,000 yuan by tomorrow, they would stop the treatment. The tearful girl took Yeon-min's hand and pressed it against her chest. "Please, buy me," she pleaded. Inside Yan, a struggle began between the demon and the angel. The lustful demon told him to take the girl, while the angel forced the pervert to shut up, reminding him that it would be a vile act. The guy took out the bundle of money he had taken from the bandit and gave it to the girl. He gave her the money just like that, but asked her not to return to that place again. The girl was overwhelmed with emotions as she remembered that her relative had refused to give her money, but a stranger gave her a lot of money just like that. She was very grateful to him. The next day, when Yan Min arrived at school, he saw 2 police officers, and his beloved teacher informed him that they wanted to talk to him. The police officer introduced himself as the chief investigator of the Criminal Investigation Department and showed his identification. Then he asked Yan Min to accompany them to the police station. They informed him that the young man was suspected of being involved in a murder case. The teacher stood up for him, outraged by their decision to take him to the station, and stated that she would not allow it. The guy couldn't understand what murder they were accusing him of. The police officers said they would explain everything at the station. The guy was confident that he hadn't done anything wrong and that he would be released quickly. In the interrogation room, Yan Min sat with 2 police officers. They asked a series of standard procedural questions. They asked what the guy had been doing yesterday evening, and he told them about spending time with his teacher until 8:30, and then going to a cafe to eat meat with noodles. One of the female police officers became furious and ordered him to speak directly. The guy wanted to continue, but the beautiful police officer in a short skirt tried to morally pressure him. The guy slowly continued his story about eating beef with noodles, which further infuriated the young officer. However, the senior-ranking police officer yelled at her, stating that an investigator should be able to control their emotions. After calming down her subordinate, he allowed the guy to continue. The guy explained that when they were heading home, they encountered a robber on the street. The investigator informed him that the man he mentioned was found dead, suffocating from lung bleeding. Yan Min was shocked by this news. He didn't expect that he would kill someone. The guy panicked for a moment, but there was still no information available about the identity of the deceased. The young police officer left the room to find out if there was any new information about the dead person, but she was accidentally hit by another colleague who was in a hurry. The colleague hastily reported that the deceased was wanted for robbery, rape, and murder. In other words, Yan Min's actions might be considered lawful self-defense. The emotional officer fell right onto Yan Min, and he struggled to breathe under her young and hot body. While trying to free himself from the weight on his face, Yan Min accidentally grabbed the police officer's breast, which resulted in him receiving a strong blow to the face. Yan Min arrived at the police station as a suspect, but left as a hero. The police thanked him for his noble and remarkable act. The deceased was an obvious monster and scoundrel. The head officer ordered the beautiful officer to apologize to Yan Min and escort him back to school. They quickly brought Yan Min back to school, so he felt a bit dizzy. Min Yan approached him, another classmate, and started questioning him. She asked about his face and why he didn't come to school in the morning. She wanted to examine the marks on his face, but the guy took it as flirtation and tried to kiss her. She was very embarrassed by this and slapped him. Poor Yan Min. By the end of the day, his face wouldn't have any uninjured spots. The girl wondered why Yan Min was thinking about inappropriate things instead of studying. After calming down a bit, she felt sorry for hitting the guy and decided to go back and apologize. Yan Min was lost in his daydreams and swayed on his chair. But when he saw Wang Chitao in front of him, he fell off the chair but managed to grab his tie and pull him down too. The guy yelled at his classmate for sneaking up on him so silently, but the wealthy classmate just wanted to remind him about dinner on Saturday. As they fell, Wang Shitao ended up on top of Yan Min, and their lips were too close. At that moment, Min Yan burst into the room. Seeing the 2 boys sitting on top of each other, she was shocked, thinking they were engaging in something indecent. She turned around and ran away. Yan Min felt embarrassed and worried about his reputation. And then, their beloved teacher entered the classroom and also saw the two boys sitting on each other. Yes, it was a very awkward situation indeed. Saturday evening arrived. Wang Qitao and Yan Min sat in the luxurious restaurant Heaven and Earth. There were many appetizers on the table, and the guys were drinking beverages. Wang Qitao slowly kept offering drinks to Yan Min, who began to suspect why his classmate had changed so abruptly. Under the influence of vodka, Yan Min's head started spinning, while Wang Qitao continued to ply him with alcohol. Wang Qitao had secretly spiked the drinks, and Yan Min fell unconscious. "Follow the plan," commanded the young wealthy man to his servants. The guys carried Yan Min into a room, undressed him, and threw him onto the bed. There was a beautiful, partially naked girl already lying there, blindfolded. After some time, Yan Min regained consciousness, feeling strange and unusual. Something was happening to his body, and everything seemed like a dream. Trying to understand where he was, Yan Min was surprised to see the half-naked beauty beside him, her eyes blindfolded. Under the influence of alcohol and the drug Wang Qitao had mixed into his drink, Yan Min believed that everything that was happening was a dream. Since it was a dream, he decided to take advantage of the girl lying next to him. He spread her legs and positioned himself on top, causing the girl to moan in pain. She begged him to stop, but his classmate outside the door was executing his cunning plan. He wanted to capture everything on camera and call the police. Yan Min was ready to finish. At the police station, the chief reprimanded his subordinate for exceeding the speed limit in a police car and leaving it unattended on duty. The phone rang at the police station, and the duty officer picked up the receiver. The voice on the other end informed her that a visitor at the restaurant had committed a crime. The caller mentioned that screams were heard from room 315, and the girl inside was calling for help. The duty officer directed a police car to the specified location. The police forcefully entered the room and removed Yan Min from the girl. They began to arrest him. Yan Min gradually started to recover from the effects of the substances and realized what had happened. He would undoubtedly be imprisoned for rape. Yan Min realized that he had been set up, but it was too late. He found himself in the interrogation room once again, trying to explain how everything unfolded and how he was drugged and framed. The police forced him to provide urine samples for analysis. Yan Min began urinating directly into a cup in the office, but at that moment, the same young female officer entered. The chief ordered her to take the urine sample and send it for analysis. The policewoman was irritated by this treatment, but she had no choice and agreed. As she handed the cup, trembling, Yan Min accidentally spilled some urine on her hand. As she left the room, the policewoman slipped and fell, dropping the cup of urine from her hand. It spilled all over her, from head to toe. It was painful and humiliating for her. Yan Min was outraged because his urine was now spilled, and he didn't know how to prove his innocence. He accused the policewoman of intentionally causing this incident to ensure his imprisonment. Thankfully, Yan Min had filled 2 cups of urine, and the chief stated that he would personally deliver the urine sample for analysis. The humiliated and offended policewoman was ordered to be released. She couldn't hold back her tears, and Yan Min began apologizing to her. Yan Min would remain in custody, even if drugs were found in his urine. In reality, he had committed rape, and Yan Min understood that. In the morning, the chief arrived at the station and brought the results of the analysis. Drugs were indeed found in Yan Min's system, but all the evidence had been removed from the restaurant. Yan Min felt remorse for his actions, but the law didn't work that way. The final decision would be made by the court, and now Yan Min found himself in a cell among other inmates. The experienced cellmates immediately became curious about why he ended up behind bars, but Yan Min didn't want to interact with the local prisoners and told them not to approach him. Naturally, upon hearing such audacity, the inmates wanted to beat him, but they remembered that Yan Min was skilled in fighting and standing up for himself. He deftly avoided the attacker and struck him, causing the attacker to fall to his knees and struggle to breathe. Yan Min repeated his warning for them to stay away. Realizing how strong Yeon-min was, they decided it was better not to mess with him and immediately changed their approach. The inmates began to treat him with respect. Yeon-min introduced himself as Yeon-gae Almighty and asked them to tell him how everything worked there. He lay down, closed his eyes, and woke up in a beautiful place on lush green grass. He was dressed elegantly, and next to him was the stunningly beautiful Min-yeon in a beautiful wedding dress. Strangely, he couldn't move, and it wasn't Yeon-min who was the groom. The girl in the wedding dress ran to Wang Chitao, and the couple looked at Yeon-min as if he were a beggar. Then the hotel girl approached him, blaming him for rape and for ruining her life. She hated him and cursed him. He tried to defend himself, but when he turned around, he saw Teacher Chow looking at him with disappointment. After all, he had promised to marry her, and now she looked at him as if he were a reject. Then a female police officer came and pressed a gun to his temple, saying, "Die, you scum of society!" Yeon-min burst into tears and begged for forgiveness, and then he woke up. It was a horrible nightmare. As he woke up, he saw an old man grabbing his hand and pretending to play it like a guitar. This old man was crazy, and it wasn't worth taking him seriously. "Sometimes things like this happen," explained one of the cellmates. But Yeon-min couldn't ignore it, and it clearly irritated him. Bao, as his cellmate was called, told Yeon-min not to move and just wait for the end of the song. But Yeon-min became suspicious because the old man seemed to be singing a love song, and he wanted to kick the old man's backside. But then, something unexpected happened. Moans echoed through the prison walls. The old man was incredibly strong, and Yeon-min couldn't free himself from his grip. The sensation for Yeon-min was as if all his bones were broken. Morning came, and the guards ordered everyone to get up. Surprisingly, Yeon-min didn't feel any pain after yesterday, but he felt lightness throughout his body. The old man had amazed him the day before. The inmates headed for breakfast, and one of the inmates pushed the old man, causing an egg to fall from his hands. He tried to chase the old man away, but Yeon-min naturally couldn't stand by and intervened. He picked up the fallen egg from the floor and told the arrogant inmate to approach him. As soon as he approached, Yeon-min struck him in the face with the egg, forcing it into his throat. "You wanted to eat, so eat this," Yeon-min said. The friend of the arrogant inmate initially tried to stop Yeon-min, but then decided not to mess with him. Yeon-min brought an egg from the cafeteria and handed it to the old man, who was very grateful. Another cellmate noticed that Yeon-min had a very kind heart and told him that the old man was not only poor, but also unhappy. He had been here for many years. Once, this old man was an influential figure, but due to circumstances, he was framed by a woman who eventually abandoned him. A policewoman came to the police station, the same woman who was in the hotel that night and whom Yeon-min, under the influence of drugs, had used. She claimed she didn't want to know the identity of the person who had done that to her, but the policewoman explained that it was part of the procedure and she needed to identify the person. Look at the photos. Reluctantly agreeing, she looked at the photograph and immediately recognized Yeon-min. She was the same girl from the nightclub who had given money for her father's treatment. It was difficult for her to believe that such a good person could do something like that to her. In her thoughts, she began to justify him, understanding that he had been framed. She was very grateful for his help that night, and now decided it was her turn to help him. The girl asked the officer not to put Yeon-min in prison, to which the officer indignantly stated that Yeon-min had committed a terrible act. "He cannot go unpunished," the officer insisted. But the girl persisted, saying that he was a good person and that he had simply been set up. But the officer remained unconvinced, as how could a good person commit such bad deeds? There could be no pardon for him. Such things cannot be forgiven. Despite the officer's persistence, Yeon-min was still punished and sent to prison. The girl still begged for his pardon and even claimed to be his girlfriend. Well, the officer had nothing else to do but take the victim's statement and report to his superior. It seemed there were no more grounds for detaining Yeon-min. Meanwhile, in the prison yard, Yeon-min dealt with some more scoundrels. Several people attacked him, but it wasn't a big problem for him. Skillfully swinging his fists and legs, he scattered the attackers in different directions. Bao, his recent acquaintance, came to his defense, but Yan Min handled everything himself, delivering powerful blows to the prisoners. A white jeep entered the prison yard, and one of the inmates shouted that it was time to stop the fight because she had arrived. She was the prison warden. She got distracted for a moment, and immediately a brawl broke out. She immediately demanded an explanation of what had happened, pretending to be a victim of the attack, blaming the bald inmates for orchestrating it, and asked for protection from the warden. The warden put her foot on Bao's face, casually pushed him away, and ordered them to go to their cells. In reality, she had come for Yan Min, summoning him from the crowd. She said that they would go on a little journey. The prison warden led Yan Min to her office, poured herself a cup of aromatic tea, and began to scold him like a child, reprimanding him for causing trouble and threatening him with punishment if he continued to create problems. But Yan Min would have been glad if such a beauty had taken disciplinary measures against him. However, before Yan Min could finish his sentence, the girl swiftly jumped up, swiped her beautiful leg, and hit him directly in the neck and face. Yan Min was astonished by her speed. It seemed impossible, but the girl calmly continued, saying that she didn't like being interrupted. The girl was obviously a highly experienced martial artist, as it seemed she hit a special spot on Yan Min's body that immobilized him. It was as if a massive snake had tied up his body. The warden explained that Yan Min couldn't move because of it, and still couldn't fully understand who this girl really was. She was clearly very dangerous. At one moment, she attacked him and threatened him, and in another moment, she acted sweetly, behaving like his sister. Apparently, this girl had some personality issues. The girl extended her hand to Yan Min, helping him stand up with a smile on her face. She announced that Yan Min would soon be released, which greatly surprised him, and he didn't believe it. However, the warden informed him that the victim had withdrawn her statement, and he should tidy himself up because the boss would come to pick him up soon. Yan Min was incredibly happy about this unexpected news. As a final request, Yan Min decided to ask the warden for help in releasing the old man as well. He claimed that he had been unjustly imprisoned and had already suffered enough. The warden promised to look into it, but at that moment, she suddenly flew towards Yan Min, pressed him against the wall, covered his mouth with her hand, and pressed her knee between his legs. She was a very strange girl. She had already made some plans for Yan Min. In reality, the girl was burning with desire to meet Yan Min again and do something to him. Her leg moved higher and higher. Yan Min asked to be released because it was time for him to gather his things, and she let him go. Yan Min was shocked by the encounter with the warden. She was very dangerous, and her behavior was unpredictable. Others treated her with great respect and fear. Yan Min hurriedly left the office, making sure she didn't do anything else. In the office, a man in a white suit appeared and said that this guy seemed to be skilled enough, although his character didn't fit for a certain task that this man had in mind. He was amazed that the guy didn't faint under the pressure of the Snake King and managed to regain his composure, and his heartbeat remained steady. The warden drifted into a daydream about what she would do to Yan Min during their next meeting. From her fantasies, the man in the white suit brought her back to reality with a blow to her head, saying that the girl should listen to him carefully. The girl was greatly offended that he had hit her and retaliated by kicking him forcefully. Swinging her legs, she beat up her assailant. Next time, he would know how to approach her. Their fight was interrupted by the old man. He was dressed in a suit with a tie and looked very well groomed. The old man was indeed very strong, as he managed to lift the girl with one hand and Yan Min with the other, scolding them like children. After reprimanding them, he let them go. After tasting the treats, the old man spoke up. He had been hiding for so many years, and he became curious about how many people still remembered the kings of assassins. He ordered his men to spread the message that he was still alive and wondered if anyone would come looking for him. The police chief took Yan Min from the prison. The chief decided to lie down almost like Yan Min with his visit, and warned him to be more careful in the future and avoid getting into similar situations. The female officer was puzzled by why the victim had shown such kindness to Yeon Min and why she had let him go. But the officer simply felt a sense of duty towards Yeon Min, but now she believed she had dealt with him enough. Beautiful sounds of piano playing echoed from a house where a young, wealthy man named Wang Chi was practicing. He rejoiced in his victory over Yeon Min and thought he had eliminated his competition. But suddenly, he received a call informing him that Yeon Min had been released. This greatly angered the young, wealthy man, and he angrily threw his phone. He couldn't believe Yeon Min's stroke of luck. It had only been a few days since Yeon Min was a suspect, and now he seemed to have returned to school as if nothing had happened. Yeon Min met Min Yeon in the hallway. She was worried because she didn't know where Yeon Min had been all those days, and she promised that if he continued to skip class, she would no longer help him. It seemed that the scandal of his arrest had not spread throughout the school, and Min Yeon still didn't know about it. Yeon Min felt a pleasant feeling seeing her. Wang Chi approached Yeon Min as if nothing had happened, pretending to be a friend, and embraced him like an old comrade. He acted as if he didn't understand why Yeon Min had been absent from school for so long, and mentioned that he had crime scene photos that he hadn't shared yet. Yeon Min knew who Wang Chi was and understood that he had set him up, but he pretended to be a fool and wanted to hear from his enemy what had happened after Yeon Min had gotten drunk. Wang Chi replied that he had simply asked the waiters to take him upstairs so he could rest. Yeon Min also acted as if he didn't understand and offered his gratitude for Wang Chi's concern, and the two pretended to agree to have dinner together. They concealed their hatred and desire for revenge with smiles, pretending that nothing had happened and that they were good friends. Their seemingly pleasant conversation was interrupted by their mutual friend. It was time for class, and they had to go to their respective classrooms. The guys smiled at each other and went their separate ways. Behind their smiles hid hatred and a desire for revenge, but outwardly, they pretended as if nothing had happened and that they were good friends. Returning to their studies with Teacher Chow after class, they diligently reviewed their work. Teacher Chow checked Yeon Min's work and informed him that it was time to end the after-school sessions as he had made excellent progress and seemed ready for the exams. However, Yeon Min didn't want to end his encounters with the charming teacher so quickly and looked for excuses to continue their meetings. The day of the exam arrived, and the bell rang, signaling the end of the exam time. Yeon Min met Min Yeon in the hallway in a cheerful mood. It seemed that Yeon Min had done well in the exam, and Min Yeon noticed his progress in studies, which made her happy. Yeon Min attributed his success to Min Yeon, as she had helped him get back on the right path and supported him in difficult times. He mentioned that without her, he would have given up. However, the girl didn't share his romantic sentiments and stated that it was simply her duty as the class monitor. She wanted to go home, but Yeon Min insisted on taking a walk. He was persistent, and eventually the girl gave in. They strolled around, played around a bit, and joked. Yeon Min managed to make the girl laugh and brightened her mood. Taking her hand, he made her feel a little awkward. She quickly withdrew her hand and ran ahead. It seemed like a simple accidental touch, but it greatly excited her. During their walk, they discussed various topics. Yeon Min told a story, hinting at a close relationship between a boy and a girl. However, Min Yeon pretended not to understand. Along their way, they encountered a street vendor, and the girl decided to buy 2 figurines from him, but realized she had forgotten her wallet. Yeon Min had no choice but to pay for it. The girl promised to pay him back, but Yeon Min said it wasn't necessary since she had helped him with his studies. Yeon Min then asked if their meeting resembled a date, which once again confused her, and she replied that it was just a casual walk. Yeon Min asked Min Yeon if they would have another walk like this, to which she replied that it would depend on the results of his exams. Just then, a car arrived to pick her up, and she bid farewell to Yeon Min, leaving him alone on the street. He started making his way home, lost in his thoughts. On his way, he encountered the familiar police chief in his police car. The chief greeted him and mentioned that he had come to inquire about Yeonmin's well-being. The policeman's behavior seemed strange, and he asked peculiar questions. He inquired if Yeonmin was dating the girl, but Yeonmin couldn't understand how it concerned the police and why they were asking such questions. The officer invited him to sit in the car. The police officer invited Yeonmin for a conversation about Fang Tian, the old man for whom Yeonmin had sought supervision. The chief personally took charge of the case and reviewed it, noticing several suspicious elements. Fang Tian had been sentenced to a lengthy prison term for theft, but the duration seemed excessive for the charge. Additionally, there were indications that Fang Tian was associated with a group of thieves. Yeonmin insisted that the old man had been framed, and the prolonged imprisonment had caused him to become somewhat deranged. The police chief believed that there might be a chance to save him and promised to investigate the case more thoroughly. During their conversation, the chief also asked about Yeonmin's school life and his relationship with Wang Qi. Yeonmin recounted that Wang Qi behaved quite friendly, although he knew that Wang Qi had set him up. However, they needed to find evidence to expose him. They continued to talk amicably about Yeonmin's plans for his studies and his aspirations to enter university. The police chief encouraged him to achieve success. The police officer bid farewell to Yeonmin, who then boarded the bus. Inside the bus, he met his girlfriend, and they engaged in a pleasant conversation. Yeonmin began to flirt, but the girl quickly extinguished his enthusiasm. In a moment of carelessness, Yeonmin accidentally bumped into a neighboring guy with his elbow. The guy immediately became furious and started yelling at Yeonmin. In response, Yeonmin retorted with sarcasm, further infuriating the passenger. The guy raised his hand to strike Yeonmin, but Yeonmin swiftly caught his wrist and squeezed it with such force that the guy winced in pain. On their way, the young couple entered a bookstore where Min Yeon provided suggestions on which books Yeonmin should buy. Yeonmin wanted to purchase a book about lip reading, as he thought it would complement his X-ray vision ability. While searching for the book on the shelves, he accidentally ended up on the lowest shelf. As he attempted to stand up, he lifted his head and found himself face to face with a beautiful girl wearing a short skirt. His gaze inadvertently fell between her legs, and the girl mistook him for a pervert, casting a disgusted look at him. Yeonmin, however, noticed the girl's voluptuous and attractive figure, and his desire was evident on his face. This further incensed the girl, and she told the young man to stop staring at her. Yeonmin, considering the girl too arrogant and self-absorbed, decided to put her in her place. He claimed that his girlfriend was much more beautiful than her and referred to her as an auntie, which greatly offended her. The girl believed she looked much younger than her age, and Yeonmin's remark hit a nerve. Yeonmin turned away and left, having obtained everything they wanted from the bookstore. The young couple gathered their belongings and prepared to leave. Subscribe to Manhwa Universe to know who our hero will sleep with in the next episode. Thanks for watching and see you soon.